All right, I'm here with Brendan Eich, who is the illustrious creator of JavaScript and also now the Brave browser. And I'm honored to be in your presence. Want to ask
Likewise.
thank you. And I want to ask you a few questions about your days with JavaScript and how you got to creating Brave.
Sure. So I created JavaScript in a mad hurry in 10 days in May 1995. It was supposed to be the sort of sidekick language to Java, hence the name. And it was Netscape's really initiative. It was my creation solely. No other engineers helping at first. And Mark Andreessen was my collaborator and sort of throwing ideas at me. And Bill Joyett's son did support it, so he's the one who actually got the trademark license in December of 1995, so it became renamed JavaScript. But the idea was to make an easy-to-use language right in the web page. You could embed it in the HTML, and that was initially the only way you could write it. And you could do amazing things to animate or enliven or build what we would now call web apps or things like Gmail. But it was so underfunded, it was so rushed that it wasn't clear, even to me, it was going to survive. Meanwhile, Java was supposed to be this big programming language that everyone used for the serious browser programming, writing components. It turned out to be wrong. Java became another plugin, and Flash, in some ways, stole its thunder. Meanwhile, all plugins were stuck in these rectangles in the web page, and if you remember, restaurants used to have their whole menu inside a Flash plugin, but Steve Jobs kind of killed it with the iPhone, and now everything's HTML5, which we helped create when I was at Mozilla in partnership with Opera and Apple. Ultimately dragged Microsoft in when we got it to the W3C. So the whole history of my career was doing something in a hurry in the 90s that became an instant standard, and then working on the standard to make sure it improved. Standards do change, they usually grow. And working with developers, working eventually in open source with Mozilla as a project in 1998 that Netscape spun out its code into. And what I realized a decade later, unfortunately, was that JavaScript, my creation, had become the sort of mechanism for tracking and advertising what people call surveillance capitalism. Right? So my innocent little scripting language, the sidekick language that grew up to be the big language in the browser, and even now, 10 years ago on the server side with Node.js, was also being used for things that started bothering people enough that they got ad blockers or tracking protection add-ons for their browsers. In some parts of the world, those were baked into the browser, like UC browser. And I was at Mozilla. We didn't bake ad blocking and tracking protection into Firefox, though we could have. Apple and Safari did, and this kind of, in hindsight, bothers me because I think Mozilla should have. Now, people outside of Mozilla speculate that they had a search deal with Google, and Google wouldn't let them block tracking. I don't think there was anything explicit like that. But once you get a big enough browser in the web ecosystem as it is, blocking tracking and therefore blocking a lot of ads, keeping them from contributing any kind of revenue to the publisher, seems destructive. It seems like you ought to have a way to compensate the publisher, maybe even the user. So I thought of an idea, 2015, I found it brave to pursue that idea. It involved not just blocking, but reconnecting the value chain, the payment chain, if you will, between advertisers, optionally, at the user's discretion, users, because some of them want to donate to sites, and publishers or creators in general. You can think of a creator as someone who posts a tweet or a Reddit post, or someone who puts a video on YouTube. But obviously, mainline publishers, Washington Post, also need support, especially if you're blocking their ads. I think it's within the user's right to block ads. This is pretty well settled in many jurisdictions by case law. The web is designed so that someone who is, visually impaired can use a screen reader, and that screen reader will remove ads and other inessential content and try to read the text. So the web standards are designed to let you mix and match, cut things out, even recombine things. And not only ad blockers, but other extensions, and sort of user scripting is kind of an art about how to do that well, but it's all within the user's power and rights to do it legally. What we did with Brave was then say, if you want, you can then opt into a system where you get some cryptocurrency or some tokens, and you can give those to your favorite creators. You can let them be automatically given anonymously. So we had to solve several problems. One is not just reconnecting users and creators or publishers, but also keeping users from being fingerprinted or identified or tracked. and that required anonymity tech, which is part of Brave's platform. We had to consider how to solve problems that current blockchains don't do well, like if you want prompt tipping to be visible to the publisher, how do you do that without writing to the blockchain? Writing to the blockchain may be slow, it may be costly, and it may fingerprint you. So we've taken on this mission, and we're finding an interesting path toward a better future where we think high-speed blockchains will have zero-knowledge proof systems, anonymity systems built into them. And this leads to a better world where users have not only a piece of the action if they want, they can get revenue from private ads, they have strong privacy and anonymity guarantees, and they can choose when to identify to a publisher they like. That's always possible by becoming a subscriber, but they don't have to at first. They can still support that publisher even before they subscribe. We think advertising shouldn't be counted out because so much of the funding of publishers, even though the system is inefficient and fraud prone, does come from advertising. So if you just wiped it all out, you'd have to get a lot of donors making up for it quickly, and we don't see that happening overnight. So that's the idea of Brave in a nutshell. But it was based on this sort of learning how JavaScript had become abused over time through a very organic process, very much like biological evolution, where from the old days in the 90s, a website with mostly text and images and a browser that rendered those could grow to have what are called third parties, tracking partners or partners of the publisher who are promising better ad performance or better ads, but were in order to deliver those ads, tracking users across many sites. That didn't come about intentionally. It was an accident. The whole idea of cookies as a way of sites keeping a little bit of state about you in your browser, indexed by their domain name, their host, was intended mainly for your bank, so you wouldn't have to log in every time you went forward or back in your browser. But it turned out by embedding a little bit of content in any page, you could have a third-party cookie for the embedded server, and it could track you. It could be embedded in enough sites that it built a very complete profile of you.
So I have to say, in all honesty, that I have switched my default browser to Brave just because I like the performance of it and the fact that I can filter out ads. But it sounds like you're not taking a stance on ads on the internet in general. You want to be supportive of it, but you want to change how it works in the future.
Like I said, if you wiped out all the ad spend, it would put a lot of publishers out of business right away. They would have no recourse. They could not get the subscribers in enough numbers to make it up. Also, you think about what is an ad. If you go to National Geographic's website and you see this beautiful image and it's really promoting, World Wildlife Fund or something, maybe it's not tracking you. Maybe it's encouraging you to click, and then you go to a separate page where you sign up to donate. Nothing wrong with that. How is that any different from any other kind of content? We don't see that as objectionable. It's the ads that rely on tracking that have not only facilitated this massive surveillance system, but the surveillance system has then enabled ad fraud, which steals from publishers by putting real ads in fake pages viewed by fake robot users. It's facilitated malware distribution because someone who wants to distribute ransomware can make a fake ad and put it into the ad exchange, and through tracking they can steer it at victims who have vulnerable versions of the Windows operating system, for instance. So tracking has all these bad consequences, unintended consequences, and it builds up a layer of intermediation which takes high fees, so there's less money from the ad spend left for the publisher. The intermediaries often operate in conflict with the interests of the publisher or even the advertiser, and of course the user. So users only resort to ad blocking under duress, but really, is there a better way? We think there is.
Great. And so where do you hope the Brave browser is going to be in 12 months? What do you hope to happen in 12 months?
We're growing. We want to grow even more because we have this asset, the basic attention token, this cryptographic token we can use to reward users, and they can give it back to their favorite creators. We have Brave ads now, which are private. They're matched only on your device against a fixed catalog, fixed per day, that everybody gets. Doesn't identify you to take that. This is all optional, as I mentioned, and you get 70% of the revenue from Brave ads. We'd like to grow this, prove the revenue model, and then I think we can standardize pieces of it. We can also form a sort of an alliance that embeds the BAT in many browsers, podcast apps, video players, games that have ads, anything with an attention economy. We'll have to make sure that what's embedded is fraud-proof and high integrity. The code can't be tampered with. But we have ideas on how to do that we're pioneering inside Brave. So Brave is not just a browser. It's really a platform that can go the distance. And it's a user-first platform. We align our economic interests with the user. They make the most revenue in the split. And if they don't like it, we don't make it. So we'll die. But we think we can prove it. We're growing and we're getting people to opt in, and we have this asset, the basic attention token. Where we can go beyond this, I think it's hard to see over that hill, but in general, you're seeing a rise of privacy technology and a consciousness around privacy. All the messaging systems have gone to what is called end-to-end encryption. And while there can be metadata that's still leaky or identifies you, and superpowers like nation states or networking companies or Facebook and Google can still see some of that data, you have some message confidentiality and integrity guarantees. That's become, I think, the norm in the market because people demand it. I think you'll see more people demanding protection from tracking on the web and anything that puts pieces of the web into an app. I saw a piece last week about a lot of apps in the Apple App Store have trackers embedded in them. And I know products, we're working with one of them, Guardian Firewall app, to protect against that too. So you're seeing a rising awareness of this problem and a rising response in protective technology. I think the next level is to deal the user into the economics. And on that note, Facebook is doing their own cryptocurrency and blockchain, and they just revealed parts of it. It's too early to comment much, but I gave a talk there in August 2017, and I think they listened to me. So you can expect similar moves from them because they do have privacy, let's say a tarnished privacy reputation.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a big topic and a big hill, so it'll be very exciting to see what happens to Brave, and I wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan.